everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Star Sitdown. My name is Kim Davis Jr., the podcast editor at the Star, and today we have a special guest. She is the president of the African Student Association, Miss Chizobam Iheme, aka Chiz.
Yes.
Did I do it right? Did I get it right?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate your time. We don't know each other that well, so if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Okay, so my name is Chizobam Iheme. I'm a junior here at Texas State. I'm majoring in poli-sci and minoring in criminal justice. I hope to one day be a lawyer. I am president of African Student Association. I'm also vice president of Misunderstood. I'm also a member of Black President's Council, amongst some other things. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but yeah, I feel like that sums me up. Oh yeah, an African Student Association. So that org is essentially a way for members of the African diaspora to connect and cultivate relationships on a deeper level. So yeah,
And
but it's not limited to, sorry.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. It's not limited to. So, for example, a white person could go in there.
Of course, we have some white members, and so they're really cool.
So what made you want to be a part of this organization, and especially try and be so active in like Black Texas State?
So since high school, I've always kind of had a love for ASA. Growing up Nigerian was kind of tough because, I mean, we got called all sorts of nicknames, and especially in middle school, that's the worst. So it was like coming to high school and having an organization like ASA was really cool to me because it was like I could connect to people on a deeper level. Like, oh, you understand what I went through growing up, or how African parents are. We share some of the same experiences. And so coming to college, I just knew that I wanted to interact with Africans just like me, and I thought it'd be really cool to join ASA. So now I'm here.
How's it been being the president? How long have you been the president?
I've been the president since May of last year. It's definitely not an easy job. It really is tough balancing that plus school, plus work, and like all these other responsibilities. But I've grown so much from it, so I'm really appreciative of the fact that I get to be president. Like, I never thought that I get to be president of ASA out of any org, so that's really cool.
So how big is the organization? How many members do you guys have?
So we have about, I can't give you an exact estimate, but I would say like 50 to 60. So we have about 50, 60 people. During the pandemic and everything, we definitely thought that our org wouldn't have as much growth as we did, but I'm thankful that like we were able to grow, and like we have a very consistent base coming through every other Wednesday, or no. Our meetings are on, wait, I know this, sorry, this is awkward.
Take your time.
Our meetings are on Wednesdays, yes, Wednesdays, okay, I got it right, sorry. But yeah, sorry.
You're fine. So do you feel like there is a big African representation on campus?
Yes.
Considering the number of Black students that we have, right. Do you think that there is a lot of like African representation, like direct descendants of like African descent?
Right. Yes, I would say for what we have. I mean, I think out of Black Texas State, we do have a lot of even non-African but Black members coming through, so that's really cool as well. I know people who aren't necessarily directly involved with ASA, but are still associated with members that come to the meetings. And so I feel like to some degree, yeah, there is a degree of representation there.
Do you feel as if ASA is different than a lot of other Black orgs on campus, like BWU, BMU, BSA? And if so, why?
Well, I can't really speak much for the other orgs, But I know that with ASA, it feels like we're one big family, like we're all interconnected in some way. It's like, I know XYZ person and they know this person, and it's like, we could all link up at some point in time and it would just be all cool and vibes, if that makes sense. But yeah, I feel like there's just such a family vibe there. Like we all know each other, we love each other. If you need something, I got you, kind of thing. And so that's what I really like about ASA. But I don't know if it's like different compared to the other Black orgs.
Do you feel as if since you've been the president that ASA has had a good amount of like resources from the university? I've spoken to like Jamie Thomas from BWU, and she's spoken about like there are some lack of resources for Black orgs on campus. Have you experienced the same?
Honestly, yeah, I would say that there kind of has been a little bit of underrepresentation for us, especially being an African org. I know Tech State is majority white and Hispanic, so um, there hasn't been, I guess, that many resources allocated to us, and I feel like if there are, it's a little hard to find. So yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Something else I wanted to ask you. It's not a joke.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, we had spoken a little bit beforehand about like the perception from Black Americans
Mhm.
to per se like African like direct descendants from Africa, right?
Right.
And like I've spoken to Black people about this before, and I've heard stuff from my family. And when I've spoken to African students, like especially on Texas State campus who have African parents, they would tell me stories, and it would be kind of like that people from Africa view like Black people in this country as like very ignorant, and like they see like Black people in this country as kind of like stuck up and snooty. And like on the other side, like Black Americans kind of just see like people from Africa as like they don't see them as very prosperous. They see them as maybe people in like villages. They don't see like the industrial aspect or like the growth. They just see them kind of poor, and like they disassociate with that. And like I said, I'm a direct descendant of slavery. I don't know my African roots. I've thought about taking an African ancestry test to try and, understand a bit more. But, it kind of bothers me about like the difference in like looking at one another as opposed to like the Pan-African approach and like seeing like us all as Black people. So I kind of wanted to get your point of view, especially since, you're Nigerian, correct?
Yes, I am.
So just tell me a little bit about what you think.
So we actually had a meeting with BSA once about this, where ASA and BSA collabed, and we were having different viewpoints about this topic. And what I was able to see, that there was a lot of hurt on both sides. Like I felt like both sides had been hurt by the other side to some degree, and so I feel like a lot of it is miscommunication and just a lack of understanding mixed in with some ignorance. And I feel like if both sides could do a better job at communicating our concerns to each other, or making an effort really to kind of eliminate our ignorance about the other side, it would do us a great deal of good, to hear each other out. And so I definitely feel like growing up being African, I definitely had some perceptions about African American people. And then as I grew and I was able to kind of talk to some and grow with some, and et cetera, et cetera. I found that all the ignorance I had, or all the notions I had about African American people, I'm sorry, my phone, all the notions I had about African American people dissipated. And so it's like, I just think there's some healing that needs to happen on like both sides, honestly.
What was some of the pain that you heard from that meeting from African Americans?
Um, Basically, I just feel like, kind of like you said earlier, it's like, I would say at least for Africans, our parents kind of fed us the notion that Black people are this, or they're lazy, or they don't work as hard, or something, or they have, for example, they have the ability to have a better life in America, but because of laziness and things of that nature, they just don't prosper. And so hearing some of the African Americans say things like, "Oh, I know that. Well, we've heard that you think that we're this, or that," and it's like, And then, you know, you kind of growing, you understand that like there's definitely white supremacist functions in place to prevent people like African Americans from being able to grow in this country. And so I definitely like heard them on that, and I understand like where they were coming from.
Is some of the pain, and by no means do I want you to speak for all Africans, that's not fair to you, but do you think that some of the pain that maybe Africans have faced, like in like the perception of not like necessarily African Americans, but just like as kind of like the worldview. And like I understand from what I've heard from like my African friends who have educated me, is that like their parents, especially like the immigrants from Africa, they like instill like kind of this like really work heavy workload mindset, you know, and like I've heard as well, like maybe a child wants to be an artist, for example, and like, you know, it's like, well, what, like, what's that going to do? Is that going to give you money? Like, no, you need to, you know, get a real job.
Yeah.
Have you experienced some of that in your life?
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, I always told my mom that I wanted to be a singer, and she would always say, "Well, you can be a singer, but on the side, like you know, you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or you know something like that first." And so, um, for me, I understand though why a lot of African parents feel that way. And so, I mean, when you're coming from a place where you don't have anything, right? You're dirt poor or whatever the case may be. That's not the case for all African parents or people who immigrated, but it was my parents' case that they didn't have anything back home. And so their only way to succeed was to immigrate to America and build their lives through education. And so I think that's why a lot of African parents um, pride themselves so hard on education or push education so hard on their children because that was their only means as to kind of escaping their background or building a better life. And so, yeah, that work hard, that heavy load mindset, a lot of African parents do carry because for them, that was the way that they kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps, to say the least.
And in the meetings that you've had with ASA, is that kind of like a big sentiment like within that community?
Um, Not with our current generation. I think a lot of us have kind of rid of ourselves of that mentality. It could be from the fact that we didn't necessarily have to do what our parents did. Um, and also recognizing that some parts of it are toxic. I don't think that because you have a passion for something, that means you should push it to the background and work towards being one of the only 5 careers that will generate a bunch of money. Like, I think that doing what you love is important. I think a lot of African children or second generation Africans are seeing that they are able to pursue what they want to pursue because their parents work so hard.
And in this generational gap, do you think that potentially in the future, and I just want to get your opinion, that we will be able to see some sort of like cohesion in terms of like African Americans and Africans, like native African immigrants? Do you think we'll like start to see like eye to eye on a lot of issues and kind of just start to realize like we're black at the end of the day and we need more unity? Because in terms of like older generations and what I've like heard from my family, it's just a lot of ignorance. And you know, I've spoken to my cousin and she was telling me about how someone from a friend of hers went back to Africa, and the people that were very loving, and he started a business. He was very successful, and they opened him with open arms. And then her mother, my aunt, was like, no, you know, these African people, they come here. And she was telling us about how an African guy took a woman back to the country, they killed her, and they got a bunch of money. And I'm hearing so many different things, and that's part of the reason why, like, truly, I appreciated you coming on, because, you know, I think these types of conversations are very necessary, because at the end of the day, I think that, you know, institutions of white supremacy and this country hasn't been very good to black people, and clearly, as we've seen over these past couple of months, not much is changing. So I think that we need to start, you know, differentiating ourselves and kind of just move forward as a unit. So that was kind of a lot, but what do you think?
I definitely think that there will be cohesion between the two, both Africans and African Americans. And I just think that as time passes and we kind of learn to push aside our ignorance and learn uh, to and from each other, I think that there will be greater cohesion. I think there'll be greater unity, especially knowing that, I mean, at the end of the day, like when someone looks at you, they don't see, oh, well, you're African or, well, you're Black. No, you're Black at the end of the day in this country. And so I think the sooner we realize that, the sooner we can come together and bond in that sense.
You were at the SARS protest last year, weren't you?
I was, yes.
It's so funny.
Yeah, no. Sorry,
okay. Okay. How was that protest? And I had spoken with somebody else around that time, and I was educated a bit on SARS. So how was that protest and that experience? And has much changed with SARS? Because I didn't know much about it. I'd done a research on my own and learned about it, and from what I understood, it was like a lot of militancy and like the withholding of resources. And there was a big outcry. A lot of the information I learned was from Black people and African students at Texas State. So tell me a little bit about that protest and that experience.
Yeah. So when NSARS happened, I think it was kind of something that was revolutionary in a sense because, I mean, a lot of Africa does have corruption problems. And so for something like NSARS to kind of blow up the way it did, I think it was eye-opening for a lot of people. And I think it was kind of awesome for the people in Nigeria to understand that through means such as social media, like their voices can be heard and issues can be brought up and the whole world can see it for what it actually is. And so that was definitely the first protest I've ever done. And it was personal to me because I think the corruption in Africa, it's been extenuating for years and years and years, and to see it kind of finally come to a head, it was kind of awesome. And so I think when I first heard it, honestly, I brushed it off because I thought it was just another one of those things and things will just kind of blow over. But when I saw how people were actually taking it seriously and that people were actually calling for the end of SARS, I thought it was amazing. Because I think, and hear me out. Okay, so like it's like every day we hear in this country, it's like a new shooting and it's someone else getting killed or another Black person being hunted by the police or something of that nature. And so you kind of become desensitized, something like that word, right? And so it's like with NSARS, I kind of, like I said, initially brushed it off and then realizing, okay, like this is actually, you know, things are actually going to change or things potentially could change. I think that's when I saw it as something serious, and I definitely wanted to kind of do something to help that in a sense. Like even if, I don't know, like, yeah, sure, we're just local San Martians and, you know, what we could do, it could have a big ripple impact or it couldn't. But at the end of the day, I feel like bringing awareness to what's going on in Africa was important to me at the time. So.
Has much changed since that protest and in that movement? Because, like many things, it becomes somewhat of a trend, and then we move on to the next thing. So, do you feel as if there's been change, or is there been significant change?
I think last I heard about the situation, the Nigerian government did call to dismantle SARS. I don't know how far they went into that, but it's kind of like what you said. It's like things kind of catch a little bit of hype. People get hyped up, their emotions get, you know, really high, and then it's like, oh my gosh, we need to do something, and then things die down again, and we wait for the next problem. And I hate that that's how it is, but I feel like in the microwave generation, right, it's like we're always kind of waiting for the next thing to, you know, be concerned about. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that's the last I heard about it. So.
What do you mean the microwave generation? I've never heard that before.
Oh, so basically it's like this, how do I put this? It's like the generation where it's like we want everything really quick or we want everything like popcorn, like popcorn. I don't know if that makes sense. I need to look that up actually. I heard it from some old head. So But yeah, like the migrated generation where it's like everything's really quick or everything's really fast, and yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, I understand. It's fascinating to talk about Africa, and especially about like Nigeria and all these different places. And I feel as if it's really unique, and I think it's cool that like where you come from and you have that sense of pride, and like I just think that's really awesome. I hope in the future that more conversations like this are had, and we can kind of just unify as Black people, because that's what we are at the end of the day,
yeah.
But what the why are you just nodding your head?
You're funny. Like
I didn't do nothing. I was dead serious.
I hope that we can unify together. Like, okay, let me stop.
You're evil.
I'm a clown. I really am. That's the funny part. I really am a clown. I can't stop laughing. Okay.
Yeah, I was deadly serious, and you're just like, unification. You hear this guy?
Stop!
That's what you did.
You're a fraud.
How? I didn't do anything.
Okay.
Jeez, man.
There, it happened.
No.
I need to calm down. Okay. I don't know why that was so funny. Okay. Had to get that out.
Okay. Well, I'm speechless. How about that? Look, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it. Is there anything that you would like to shout out about your organization, or anything that's upcoming that you would like to mention before we head out?
No, I think I love ASA. I love people. And I'm grateful to be this year's president. So, and thank y'all for listening to me, even though I'm a clown.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you. Thank you to our listeners. That's really funny. That's honestly, that's one of the hardest moments I've laughed. So thank you for that. On this podcast, that's one of the hardest for you. I'm over here serious, like, yeah, like we're Black, like we need to act like it. And you're like, we're Black. Put your hand up. Unify.
Like we're about to protest or something. Calm down, dude. I'm kidding.
Okay. That's going to do it for this week's Star Sit Down. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.